Thank you for joining the Once Changing the World, India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Dr. Sheila Nirenberg, a prominent neuroscientist known for her groundbreaking research in neural coding and the development of innovative prosthetic devices aimed at treating blindness. She currently holds the position of Nanette Lateman Professor in Neurology and Neuroscience at Weill Cornell Medical College, where she also serves as a professor of computational neuroscience. Her work has been published in prestigious journals and has received numerous accolades for her contributions to science, including MacArthur Fellowship, Bressler Prize, and Barbara McClintock Women Innovator Award. Dr. Nirenberg is the founder of two startups, Bionic Sight, that's focused on developing prosthetic devices for vision restoration, and Nirenberg Neuroscience, that concentrates on creating small robots that utilize her research on neural coding. The topic of discussion today is going to be restoring vision with bionic eyes. So, Doctor, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. Will be great if you can start by explaining what blindness is, right from, the partial, complete, congenital blindness, and what are the overall general reason for complete vision loss?
Well, thank you for inviting me. Sure. So, there are lots of different kinds of blindness. So what we really focus on is blindness caused by retinal degenerative diseases. So in your retina, a lot of these things are caused by damage to your retina. And your retina is like a little mini image processor in the back of your eye. So the way it works is people think of your eye as being like a camera, and that the retina is the film in the back of it. But it's not really true. The retina is actually a little mini image processor. So it takes images in, but then it processes them, and then it sends it up to the brain. And what that processing is doing is it's pulling out features from the visual world so that it's easier for the brain to form visual perceptions and things like that, recognize faces, navigate through your environment. So for many causes of blindness, it's caused by the photoreceptors, the input cells, dying. Because if they can't receive anything, then it doesn't matter if you have any retinal circuitry left or anything else. The signals don't get into your eye, and then you become blind. One of the diseases that we're targeting is retinitis pigmentosa. And here the patients start with getting night blindness. So they start not being able to see anything at night. Then gradually their vision closes in like a tunnel. They lose their peripheral vision, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's like they're looking through a little tube, like a paper towel roll. Sometimes it gets even smaller, like a straw. And then over time, even that central area, so they can only see in the center, but nothing on the sides. Then eventually the central area will disappear also. And then eventually they go very, very blind. Then there's other kinds of blindness where you lose, like macular degeneration. There you lose vision in your central region, but your periphery is okay. So that covers, many millions of people get that. Often people have a relative who has macular degeneration or Stargardt's disease. So I'm really telling you mostly about the ones that are retina based. Of course, you can also have cataracts or glaucoma and other things that can block your vision. But cataracts can be treated with surgery, and glaucoma is something that you can prevent. So it's always important to get your eye pressure checked so that you don't go down the path of glaucoma, because it's the retinal degenerative ones that are really hard to treat. So look, I'm guilty of not getting my glaucoma checked either. So we all need to do it.
Right. So, Doctor, appreciate you kind of running us through the most of the reasons why people go blind, right from retinitis pigmentosa to macular degeneration. Would you be able to explain the work that you've been doing, which is neural coding, and how does it play a role in reversing vision loss?
Okay, so I was saying that that the retina is a mini image processor. So you have the input cells; those are the photoreceptors I was just telling you about that disappear in these diseases. Then you have all this circuitry in between, and then you go to the ganglion cells. Those are the output cells of the retina. So if you're just thinking, in a computational way, you have an input side, then some processing, and then an output side. Okay, and these are the ones that are pulling out the information to send up to the brain. So my claim to fame or whatever was that was that I sort of cracked the code, the mathematical transformation from the input to the output. So what that means is that, so I could, if you gave me any image or video or anything, I could turn it into the same pattern of electrical pulses that the retina would normally produce, so that they could send those signals up to the brain. And the reason it's important is because when a person starts to get a retinal degenerative disease, they can't do that processing by themselves. And so we have, I had the realization that if I had this code, I could make a device that could mimic what a patient, what a normal retina does, so that we could provide that for patients.
Our brain, it's extremely complex. It's got 80 billion neurons, 100 trillion synapses. The way they fire and wire brings out the touch, smell, taste, sound, and sight. Now, how are you working towards deciphering this neural code or these neural language that you're talking about? Is there like a language to the brain, these electric pulses that fires between our neurons to a synapses? Is there, I'm sure there's an audio frequency, the cut of the neural signals. Are you measuring that current, the voltage? Okay, can you explain this neural code a little bit more?
The signals are in patterns of electrical pulses. So, you've seen this in documentaries and on TV when they do it, like a recording from your brain, and you'll see those pulses. And so what I did was translate that so that I could talk to the brain in its own language, right? If I understand, if I'm looking at your face and it's going into my retina and getting converted into patterns of pulses, there exists patterns of pulses that are representing your face. Like when you nod, when you blink, everything you do is going into patterns of pulses. And it gets sent into my brain, and my brain knows what information is coming. And then later on, if I met you again, I would be able to recognize you because I start to have a memory of your face. So in a lot of the prosthetic devices that have been made in the past by other people, not for vision, but let's say for motor output, for moving an arm, for paralyzed people, what they do is they try to read the pulses from the brain and then send that into an artificial arm to help, to read it out and to help the patient with the artificial arm press buttons on a keyboard or reach for something. So what we're doing though in vision is the other direction. We're taking information and sending it into the brain. And in many ways, it's much harder because the brain calls the shots. When you're doing a motor output, even if you get it wrong, you can put some learning algorithm to help make the artificial limb grab something or type something. When you're going into the brain, you have to speak the language that the brain wants to get. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you spoke French or something, and I'm talking to you in English, you can't understand me. So that's what we were trying to do: is can we get the information to go into the brain so that the brain can understand it? So one thing that I did in parallel was I developed a way of doing this for computer vision. So I can send it into a machine learning algorithm, and I can pre-process visual information for like robot vision. And it works amazingly well. I partnered with Intel for a while, and ultimately they acquired the company. But now I'm using it for trying to restore vision.
Right. Doctor, yes, obviously, I want to talk about your efforts, which is adding value in the robot vision. So what I get over here is that you build this prosthetic eyeglass that bypasses damaged photoreceptor cells and directly stimulates the ganglion cell to transmit the visual information to the brain, right? Can you talk a little bit more about this prosthetic device at this point in time? Is this prosthetic device available, or where does that stand currently?
Okay, so it's right now we're in a clinical trial. So the way these things go, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but first, you write an application to the FDA in the U.S., and depending where you're doing it, and it was like 700 pages of material to show them that this would be safe, and we tested things in mice and a little bit in monkeys, and then And then we got permission to try it in human beings. So that's where we are now. We've tested it on 15 patients. So actually 16 patients. So there are two parts to what we do. One is, in order to get the device that they wear as glasses to send the signals in, we have to have something receive it on the retina side. So we do gene therapy. So we're doing optogenetic gene therapy.
So, Doctor, what you're building, is it similar in the lines of what Neuralink is building called Blind Sight, which recently received the breakthrough device designation by FDA? Because what I've read is that they're building this brain-computer interface implant, which promises to restore vision to people who are completely blind. Is the prosthetic, the bionic device that you're talking about, is it in the similar lines of Neuralink's Blind Sight?
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. So Neuralink, what they're doing is something in your brain. You have to get surgery. For ours, it's so easy. You go to a doctor's office and you get this injection into your eye that takes 2 seconds. They put anesthesia on your eye, they inject it in, that's it. And then our goggles can interact with the gene that's in your eye. So it doesn't involve any surgery. And that makes a big difference to patients. It's frightening to have. I think that what Neuralink is for a different population of patients who are who don't have ganglion cells left anymore, who have damaged the optic nerve, have had terrible accident, something where you can't do it through the eye anymore. You have to do it through the brain. Whereas ours is for retinal degenerative diseases, so they still have tissue intact, some tissue to work with.
Doctor, can you explain what is optogenetics and gene therapy, and also talk about your gene therapy clinical trials for retinitis pigmentosa?
Classic gene therapy. Well, I'll just tell you about our gene therapy. It's called, it's an optogenetic gene therapy. So what we're introducing is a light sensitive gene. The fact that it's light sensitive is sort of beside the point. It's just that it's something that we can interact with. We need it some way. What if we have the neural code in this device, right? And we send it, how do we get the neural code signals into the eye? So with an optogenetic gene therapy, it makes the ganglion cells, the output cells, become light sensitive. And so if they're light sensitive, but it's tied to an ion channel. So when you shine light on the cells, they'll fire an electrical pulse. That's the only part that you really need to know, is that so when I have the neural code that I said was like electrical pulses, I turn that neural code from electrical pulses into light pulses. So the goggles are just sending in light pulses in the same pattern that they would be if it were electrical pulses. Okay, and then those light pulses are activating the optogenetic gene, and they're making the ganglion cells fire in the same pattern. Okay, so it's from electrical pulses. So an image gets converted into electrical pulses in the goggles. The electrical pulses get turned into light pulses. And then those light pulses get sent into the eye to make the neurons convert them back into electrical pulses and up to the brain. In general, the way gene therapy is done is a virus is used. And I know that sounds scary at first glance, but you take a virus, you take out all of its viral genes, so it can't spread or nothing bad can happen, and you put in your gene instead. And the reason we use it is because viruses are good at getting into cells. So we take out all the bad parts and we put in the good parts, and we just use it as a vector to deliver the gene. So that's what we do. And other people have done this, of course, before us. So there's technology to build on, so we didn't have to start from scratch. We just had to show that our vector was safe. So that's why it's easy. So you inject it into the eye, it goes right into the cells, and 3 months later, the patient starts to be able to see things. For patients who are partially blind, even pretty badly blind, even those tunnel vision patients, they can gain just from the vector alone. Okay, when I say the vector, I mean the gene therapy alone. Okay, so some of them gain from that because they have a little bit of their own neural code still going because it hasn't completely degenerated. And then as they get worse and worse, then we bring in the neural coding goggles to help them more. So that's basically our plan.
Awesome. So, doctor, you said you've done clinical trials where you tried with 16 patients. What's the update on that? And, when you talk about gene therapy, you're using viral vectors, and that's been shown across, right now with COVID vaccines, they're using the same, viruses as a vector for the delivery. Gene therapy today seems to be insanely expensive. What are the next steps after the clinical trial? And when do you think this is going to be available for the people?
I'm hoping in 2 years, because even though we have good data right now, it's looking very promising. We've made people be able to see, who couldn't even count fingers, or, so if you say, how many fingers do I have? They get it wrong most of the time because they can't really see anything. Some of those patients have gone all the way onto an eye chart. The big E is 2200. So we had somebody go from 2150, which is a line just below that, all the way down to almost to 2040, which is, just not too far from where we are. So it's helping people move up on the eye chart so that they can read. A couple of patients have told us they can read a book now. Before they had to use a computer screen and make giant letters, but now they're able to read from regular print. Several of the people gained the ability to see color. So that was exciting. And to recognize objects and shapes. So it's going well, knock on wood. But there's a lot of proof required before you can make it a commercial product. So we have to go through one more trial. It's called the pivotal trial because it, pivots whether you make it or you don't make it, whether you're successful or not. And that costs a lot of money. So I'll have to raise and do another round of funding to be able to afford to do that.
Right. Yeah. So wish you and your team the very best. So, doctor, you are a researcher, a scientist who's transitioning into becoming an entrepreneur that's running two companies. What's been the learnings, from as a researcher that you would be able to share to other researchers who kind of keen on kind of taking your path of getting into entrepreneurship, and your general advice to entrepreneurs who are in the deep tech space?
Well, it's been an adventure. I can definitely tell you that. So I've learned a lot from, my plan was just to be a scientist for the rest of my life. But once you figure something out that could really help people, I would have been a jerk if I didn't do something with it. So I had to just take it and figure out, okay, how can I bring this? So one thing that's important, and people don't understand this, I didn't know either, is that you have to patent it. And the reason is because if you just publish it, you can't get investors. If you patent it, it's worth something. And the only way you can ever bring anything to help people is to have investors raise the money. Because as a professor, you have tiny money. So it's a game that you don't even realize. I have to create a profit motive. Then investors will help me. Even if they're good people, they won't invest unless there's something to return to them. So I patented it, and then I could raise money. I don't care about the money, but you have to do what you have to do. I want to make sure people understand that. I've told lots of grad students that, because when you're in graduate school, you really think, oh, I just publish it. That's all I have to do to bring it forward. But it's not really true. And okay, then you have to go through, then the next step is that you have to get regulatory approval. You have to get the FDA. You have to do a lot of safety studies, of course, to make sure that anything that you do doesn't cause any harm, right? So that's a key aspect.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a journey for anybody who's taking up the challenge of being an entrepreneur, and especially a field which is deep tech, which is the ROI horizon seems to be far away. How's been the investor sentiment? Because this seems to be such a huge problem. If it is solved, it can really be completely groundbreaking. So you of what I'm hearing from you is I'm hearing that it's still a challenge when it comes to get investors on board. Is that true, or you still have? The investment ecosystem is good.
It's okay right now. It depends how much you're asking for. So, on the scale of up to 20 million, it's probably okay. As you go higher, than that, it starts to be, people have to make sure they're going to get a return if you're asking for $50 million. And to do a clinical trial and to do all the manufacturing, it does become a lot of money. So, and you're up against people so here's my strategy for success. I'm very evidence-based. I don't like to self-promote. I don't do a lot of self-promotion at all. And what I do is show the evidence. So like when, years ago, I gave a TED talk. I just tell the story and I show the data. And then when people see the data, then they can decide, do I want to invest in this or not? Whereas I can get people to say, this is fantastic or whatever, but it's bull, it's bull. You know what I mean? Forgive my language, but if I do everything by evidence, if the evidence is good, that's what I believe. If you do good work and your evidence is strong, you will get investors. If you're just trying to sell yourself and do self-promotion, yeah, you can get investors, but you might crash and burn. And what's the point of it? It's an empty life if it doesn't really work. To me, if my thing doesn't work, then I'll quit and do something else. But I don't want to keep promoting something that doesn't work. And right now, this is really working, knock on wood. It's really thrilling to watch somebody be able to read something that they couldn't read before, or see the joy of seeing color,
Right. Yeah, Doctor, so I think, wish you more power so that you keep on doing this. And I hope that there's more investors that kind of see the effort that you are putting in trying to restore vision, because I think, if this becomes a reality where it actually goes out from the lab and it touches life and you're able to treat these patients with retinitis pigmentosa, I think it'll be really, really cool. What are the general challenges, or maybe the biggest challenges that you have faced in advancing your research?
I don't know, really. I mean, science is hard, right? So proving what you're doing is, and I don't know, it's a lot of work because you have to go through all of the regulations. So that's hard. And the self-promotion in order to raise money is hard, and because it's not natural to me. I mean, sometimes you feel like the venture capital community thinks that you're just an academic. You don't know how to run a business, but I do. I'm pretty strategic. So, but do you know what I mean? There's a certain patronizing, oh, you're an academic, you don't know, but it's like, if I could figure out the neural code, I probably could figure out business too.
I think it should be the other way around, where I think, the investors should go for people such as yourself, who are the academics who understand it deeply, rather than people who do the talk, talk rather than, like you said, prove that, what is the benefit or the product. Here you have actually done it, and you doing FDA trials. So more power to you. And you were talking about, your work being useful in computer vision. Can you share details on how your work is adding value in advancing the field of both computer vision as well as robotic vision and also brain-computer interface?
One of the troubling parts of that was, a challenging part of computer vision is that they would, train a neural network or train to solve a problem, and it would work under those conditions, but it didn't generalize to other conditions. Like this was an issue. I don't know if it's true anymore because I don't work in it right now, but for self-driving cars. So they could drive through lots of environments, but as soon as the weather conditions changed, then suddenly they couldn't see it. It was dangerous. And, I talked somewhat to I won't say what car companies admitted this, but they all did, really. So we don't have that problem. So we as human beings, you can get in a car and you can drive in the middle of the day, in the morning, at night, in the rain, when it's snowing, because millions of years of evolution have built our retina to handle these different lighting conditions and environment conditions, and also other things. Like if I'm just trying to think of other examples of, like, if I'm looking at your face, let's say, and you get up and you leave the room and you come back and you're standing at the doorway, and now it's you, but it's a smaller face because you're further away. I don't have any problem recognizing that, because millions of years of evolution have learned to pull out the features that are important for us to be able to solve problems very fast. I don't need to know where every eyebrow hair is. I don't need to know exactly about where the hairs on your beard are gray and which ones are. I can still recognize you. And so evolution's like, let's focus on what's important. Okay. So by cracking this retina's code, provided that for computer vision. So I said, okay, now instead of doing your algorithm on regular images, do your algorithm on the neurally coded version of the image. So we take images coming in video and we convert them into the neural code and have the algorithm use the neural coded version of the image. And now it doesn't care about the lighting conditions or the weather conditions or any of those things. And it works amazingly well for many, many different things. Face recognition, driving, autonomous robots, recognizing when people are shoplifting, being able to tell whether somebody's stealing something or just shopping and picking something up. We could do it for aggression detection. We worked with a company where you could pick up fights on a subway just with a camera from above. How do you tell the difference between when somebody reaches for somebody as a hug or when somebody's reaching for somebody aggressively? But the neural code was able to pull out those features and do that for aggression detection. And so Intel, the corporation, the chip company, became very interested in this. And we worked for them for a year, and they're like, okay, we're just buying this. So they bought the whole thing. So it was good. It was a lot of money. So I'm happy. But I needed to sell it because I needed to focus on blind people because I was split too much in the two things. Doing the computer vision was super fun, but doing the blindness thing is meaningful. It gives me a sense of purpose.
I guess from ImageNet to now, computer vision has really evolved from the time where we had to feed in hundreds and thousands of images for the model to recognize the object to now where it doesn't just recognize a single model, but the entire scene. It does classification, segmentation, and then we have generative AI models, which does text to image, text to video through these diffusion models. So yes, I think computer vision has evolved tremendously. And you mentioned that this model neural code, you sold it to Intel. Can you share details on how Intel has deployed this neural code model of yours?
One thing I don't know everything that they're doing, but one of them is for like doing physical therapy. I know it seems like a strange thing, but for people that get injured and they're doing physical therapy and they're trying to do the exercise right. So they put it in a robot that watches them do it. And the robot can use the neural code to say, no, you're lifting your leg wrong. You're doing it to the side, whatever it is. So they're just starting to deploy it in different ways. What we really were hoping at the time was that they would provide because they're a chip company, to provide this as a chip and then give it to university, sell it to universities, sell it to everyone so that everybody would have the chip on their computer and then everybody could do it and take from, I started and then they could take from where I started to develop all sorts of great things that are better than anything that I could do. And so I hope it goes that way. But once you sell it, you lose control. I still consult with Intel, so I do talk to them still.
I mean, you spoke about, shoplifting, physical therapy, autonomous vehicle, face detection. Where do you think it's going to be used in the possibly next 5 or 10 years?
I think behavior things are the most interesting things. Like, can you tell when somebody, when fights are breaking out? Could you anticipate it? Could you anticipate terrorists? Could you anticipate, I don't know, crimes or people carrying guns? It's just, and they also wanted to use it a lot for, in factories to see if people are like, we did some stuff for like fast food restaurants to see whether the person, can you tell when they've put the hamburger on and they're watching the various steps for fast food production. It's not that exciting an application, but it was kind of fun to do that. How easily it takes so little the neural code requires so much less data than anything else. So when I was working with Intel, the person who I was working with, her name is Stacy Shulman. She was the director of this whole branch. So she'd have an idea. She said, I wonder if you could do like fast food lines to see whether people are making the hamburgers fast enough, they're doing it correctly. So I'm like, okay. And 2 weeks later, we had done it with so little data because this is kind of what I mean when I was saying about recognizing your face. I don't need to know everything about your face. My evolution built out a way for me to pull out what's important. And so that's what happens. We could pull out what's important about making a hamburger, about sending it down the chute, about whether you put the ketchup and the mustard on, and then we're done. So I think a lot of computer vision for a long time got obsessed with knowing all the details, and that held them back. You don't really need to know all of them. For some things you might need to, but for lots of things, for behavior, you really don't. Because if I had to know, if somebody's about to slash me or stab me or something, I don't need to know everything about him. I just need to know this is a dangerous situation and I need to back away. That's how animals are built, to recognize quickly a bad situation and get out of it,
Right. Yeah, interesting, because at least, maybe like 5 or 10 years back, the computer vision model, it needed like hordes of data to at least even recognize, maybe one, or like a cat or dog. Even still, then it would make a mistake. But here you are, accelerating this entire space where it's becoming much, much better. Are there any emerging area of research or technology that excite you for their potential to transform your understanding of vision and cognition?
Well, one thing that's interesting is that if we can talk to the brain, through the eye, right? If I can talk to those ganglion cells and send messages up to the brain, we could gain understanding of how the brain actually processes visual information, because we could send in signals that are different from, we could, if the patients were willing to be volunteers, we could try things like, what if we send it like this? What does it look like? Because the patient can answer us and say, oh, when you change the code like this, it suddenly turns, into a different kind of object. So I feel like it opens a whole frontier to understanding how does the visual cortex actually work, because we can communicate with it. We get to control that. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to just sticking electrodes in and listening, we can do the telling. We can tell the brain what to see. It's a little bit creepy, but...
When do you think we'll be able to kind of solve this, where we'll be able to treat partial complete blindness? What's the timelines that you're kind of looking at?
If this works for macular degeneration, I still think it's the same thing. We'll start to be able to do, if this works, okay? If it works for macular degeneration the way it works for retinitis pigmentosa, then I think we'll make really significant progress in 2 years. So in less than 2 years, really. And then maybe we can I'll meet you again and I'll tell you. But
what advancements do you foresee in the next decade for restoring vision in patients with retinal diseases?
I think it'll be a much more hopeful picture. People will start, watching somebody, who is very, very blind, and we flash an image up and he just guesses what it is. Like it'll be a heart, or, like on a playing cards, a heart, a diamond, a club, or spades. And he just guesses randomly. And I film every single patient. So I could even show you if the patient didn't mind, at some point. And then after treatment, just even in 3 months, he's suddenly goes, oh, it's a heart. I can see it. It's a heart. And diamond, club, spades. He's getting 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 right. And then at one point he'll say, oh, it's like a green heart. And of course, we vary the color at random. And it was a club, and he's like a red club. And, we all were in the background. You can hear our voices going, oh my God, he can see color. And so then we start testing him more and more in that. Then we added fruits and vegetables. So if we can do this for this patient and several other patients, I feel that it really opens the door to restoring sight to a huge fraction of to a huge fraction of blind people. I can't wait to see what happens. It's very, very promising. And so that's all I can say. I'm embarrassed to brag any more than that. Okay?
Doctor, thank you for taking time and being part of the podcast. Like you said, maybe I'll connect back again in 2 years and see where the progress stands. And I wish you the very best. And I think, vision, that's one thing when we don't have, it takes a world into complete darkness. And if we are able to kind of completely sort that out, restore vision, I think what a world that would be. So more power to you. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. And until next time, see you. Bye-bye. Thank you, doctor. Really appreciate this.
Okay. Thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you.
Thank you.